Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Blade Breaker's Daughters in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 76, An Important Talk. Edelgard, can I talk with you? Byleth asked upon returning to the feast. Oh? May I ask why? Something important, if we can talk in private, Byleth responded. Oh? Seems like this might be important, Edie. Why don't you go on with her? Dorothea asked, nudging her friend. I am sure it's nothing like what you're assuming, Dorothea. Still, you should go on ahead. I'll make sure no one follows to bother you too, Dorothea said, giving her friend another nudge. Thank you, Dorothea, Byleth replied, nodding at her student before she glanced at her other student. It won't take long. Letting out a small sigh, Edelgard got up to follow her. What did you want to speak about, Professor? Edelgard asked, faintly curious. Staying quiet for a moment, Byleth made sure no one was nearby or trying to listen in, before she faced Edelgard again. Edelgard, about what you told me about before, about what happened back in Inver. Were there any side effects? Byleth asked as they stood in a corner of the entrance hall. Well, my hair lost all pigmentation for one, Edelgard responded warily. That's not. Frowning, Byleth took in a deep breath. How much longer do you have to live? How did you find out about that? I found out someone else went through the same thing, and that they might not live long either. Letting out a breath, Edelgard composed herself. I assume you mean Lysithea. Did you know? I had my suspicions, but nothing I could confirm without asking her, Edelgard said, looking away from Byleth. Yes, while I doubt my condition is as drastic as Lysithea's, I did lose a portion of my lifespan. If those that experimented on me were correct, I'll live to be 50, but not much more. Long enough to live a decent life, I suppose, though it's entirely possible that my health will start failing earlier. Is there any way to reverse it? In theory, yes. In practice, it is not something I have spent much time on. Why not? Edelgard paused, not expecting the sudden show of concern from Byleth. Because, these crests might be a curse, but I need their power. I already told you what I want to accomplish, Professor. Even if it takes my entire life, I will accomplish my goals. If I can help Lysithea, then I will, but I won't relinquish this power until I no longer need it. Then let's go to Rhea at least, I'm sure she can dash. No. She immediately interrupted as a jolt of panic went through her. Professor, you absolutely cannot tell her about this. Byleth blinked, not expecting such a vehement reaction. Why not? You both have a common enemy with the Agarthans, don't you? Do you think the church would be fine with what we are discussing? They hold crests to be sacred above all else, and we are talking about removing them, Edelgard said, thinking fast. Do you think Rhea will truly believe us if we tell her we just want to remove a crest from Lysithea and I? Can you swear to me that you completely trust her? I want to trust her, Byleth murmured, her hesitation obvious. But do you? She didn't. She knew that the instant the question was asked. She wanted to trust Rhea, but she just didn't. Not when she knew the Archbishop was still hiding things from her. What do you want me to do then? She asked, feeling unusually off balance. Shay wants to talk to her, to learn more about the Agarthans so she can try to help Lysithea. Edelgard felt her heart stop for a moment. If Rhea learned about Lysithea, how difficult would it be for her to learn about Edelgard's own experiences? Would she think to look? What would she do in that circumstance? She couldn't assume her enemy was unintelligent. She knew Rhea had run the Central Church for 1,000 years. If she was presented with a girl who had 2 crests and lost the pigmentation in her hair as a result, and what if she did find out? The church valued crests, Rhea valued crests, if she learned there was a way to grant people more than 1 crest. Edelgard. Her teacher's voice cut through her swirling thoughts and Edelgard took a steadying breath. She was strong. She wasn't going to let what happened to her happen to anyone else. So she fought down the images in her mind of being chained down again, only this time with the Knights of Syros standing over her instead of those horrible mages in their bird-like masks, and faced her professor again. I'm sorry to ask this of you, Professor, but please refuse your sister's request. Are you sure, Edelgard? Byleth asked, the concern in her voice obvious. It could help. It could. But it could also destroy everything I'm working towards. So, please, Professor. I promise, I'll do everything I can to help Lysithea once I am able, but I cannot take a risk in trusting Rhea right now. Okay. At her teacher's acceptance, Edelgard felt a swell of relief, though she tempered it when she noticed the conflict present on her teacher's normally stoic face. I presume there is a condition though. Yeah. I want you to talk to Shay and Lysithea about it. If I'm going to be denying Lysithea the help she might need, she deserves to hear the reason why. She sighed. That is a reasonable point, Professor. I can accept your condition. It was hard to miss the relief on her professor's face as she agreed. Edelgard knew there was a risk here, trusting so many with her secrets, but, she wanted to, hypocritical though it may be. It might be foolish, but she wanted her teacher by her side. Shay felt sick to her stomach. She'd been surprised when Byleth came back with Edelgard and even more surprised when the two of them asked to talk with Lysithea, but she'd gone along with it and brought her friend over to join in. She hadn't expected Edelgard's story though. And the more she heard, the more horrified she felt to have any connection with those monsters. There will be many things I have to do, but once the year ends, I will be crowned emperor, and I promise to use everything that I have to help you, Edelgard vowed. There were some documents left behind at the palace by them, which may assist us in helping you. To think they could even do this to someone like an imperial princess, Lysithea said, stunned at the revelation. I had thought it had only happened to my family because of the power we lost. Are you sure we can't talk with the church for help? Shay asked, her head still swimming with all this new information. Think about it. These Agarthans are a group the populace knows nothing about. I assume your father also had no knowledge of them, and yet he was a knight captain, Edelgard explained, trying to be rational. Or at least sound it. We already know the church destroys classified documents, and the Agarthans themselves are likely only known to Rhea as a long-forgotten enemy of the church. Even if they still have documents about them, they likely won't have anything about what sort of abilities they have. I will admit, I can understand your logic, Lysithea said. Hey, wait, Shay said as something came to mind. Why did they leave you alone? Lysithea was supposed to be a failure, but you were what they wanted, right? Then why aren't you under their control or something? That is because their former leader passed away, and the one that took over after him seemed to have no interest in trying to leash me, Edelgard explained, thinking about the Agarthan named Mycen who Ferdinand had brought up. The one Bias had confirmed had a hand in the experiments run on her. Duke Aegir was tasked with keeping an eye on me, but his incompetence led to me having more freedom than they intended. Was it your uncle? Byleth asked, causing Edelgard's breath to hitch. Huh? What about her uncle? Shay asked. When we first met, you never once seemed sad about your uncle's passing, Byleth continued, addressing Edelgard, and he had also been involved with the insurrection, right? The man I had called my uncle was replaced a long time ago. It likely happened sometime after he took me to the kingdom, Edelgard said, steeling herself. Mourning the man I once knew won't change anything. All I can do is march onwards to the future. To that end, Lysithea, once the year is over, will you come to the Empire with me? It may be difficult, but if the two of us are there, then a way to reverse this will become that much easier once the time comes. Can you promise me that even if this fails my parents will be okay? The young girl requested. Hey, don't act like we'll fail without even trying. Shay spoke up. I'm not. I want to make sure my family is taken care of even after I pass away. That's what I wanted to focus on, but if I am to turn my attention elsewhere, I want your word they'll be okay. Edelgard nodded solemnly. I swear it upon the Hresvelg name, that your family will want for nothing. It is the least I can do for how the Empire has made you suffer. Thank you, Lysithea said, the tension in her body slowly releasing. Perhaps it would be best if we retire for the night. Edelgard suggested. We can discuss what to do at a later date. Yeah, probably for the best. Here, come on Lysithea, I'll help you to your room, Shay offered. I don't need your help, the mage muttered, even as she accepted her hand. I must say, I didn't expect this conversation, Edelgard managed to say after the two left the room. Though, it feels good being open about this. Even an emperor needs help, Byleth said, relieved that her sister had gone along with their change in plans. No matter how strong you are, you can't change the world on your own. Perhaps you're right, Professor, Edelgard admitted. You said you would assist me when it came to achieving my goal, correct? Yes. Though I may be under contract with the monastery right now, I'll do everything I can to help you, Byleth said, before pausing. Though don't let Geralt know I said that. I don't think he'd appreciate it if I accepted a contract without knowing any details. Ever the mercenary, aren't you? Edelgard asked, letting out an amused chuckle. Regardless, I look forward to your assistance during my eventual reign. I'm looking forward to it as well, Byleth said, smiling. Thank you. Now, you should head back to the festivities. It's only right that you get to enjoy yourself. Aren't you coming along? No, there is much I need to think about. Though if you would, could you tell Hubert to come by? I need to discuss what we talked about with him. I can't say I'm surprised Hubert is already in the know. Very well, just make sure not to stay up late, Byleth requested, bowing to her before she left. Letting out a sigh, Edelgard collapsed onto her bed. She was certainly going to be in for it, knowing how displeased Hubert would be about sharing so much. Still, it felt good being honest, and she would need allies for what she was planning. No matter how long it took, she would gather the forces she needed and change the world, even if it cost her her life. So, how'd it go? Dorothea asked once Byleth sat down so she could properly join the feast. You were gone for quite some time. Ah, I just had to talk about something important with Edelgard, Byleth explained, grabbing some meat skewers so she could eat. Really? Would that be what you told me about before? Oh, should I have told her about that? Byleth inquired, a bit curious. Well, it might have helped, Dorothea said, internally sighing. I mean, if you ask me, it does seem like couples are starting to form. They are. Of course, you just need to keep an eye out, Dorothea explained, glancing around the room for examples. Hilda certainly seems to be trying with Marianne, and I have to admit, there is something cute about Bernadette and not finding Hubert as scary anymore. She noted as she saw the pink-haired girl leaning close to the blue-haired one, while the anxious archer seemed to be fidgeting a bit more now that Hubert had left. And you can't tell me Constance doesn't feel something for Happy. If it was anyone else, she probably would have cast one of those weird spells of hers on them for shoving food in her mouth. Huh. Yup, so what do you think? Made any progress yourself? Not particularly. Byleth admitted. Those thoughts had taken a backseat recently. I talked with Manuela a bit and she gave me some advice, but, I think, at the very least, I won't be dating anyone until the year ends. Really? Yeah. I still don't know how that stuff feels, but, for now, I think I want to focus on making sure all of you graduate. You know, Professor, just cause you're in charge of us doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself too, Dorothea noted with a mock pout. I know, but, the advice Manuela gave me was to just go on a date with someone, and if I'm being honest, I don't know who I would go on a date with, Byleth admitted. So for now, I'll focus on this job, and then I'll think about romance. Well, if nothing else, I have to admire your dedication, Dorothea praised. Bringing the meat skewer up, Byleth began to eat. Still no luck on your end? Nope. I mean, Ferdinand asked if I wanted to have tea together, and well, tea is one thing, but I can't really see myself spending my life with him. That's not even to go into how bad the others can be. All Felix seems to care about is flailing his sword about. Sylvain is an entire mess unto himself, and Ingrid, she's cute, but she doesn't seem to be interested, Dorothea muttered with a huff. What about Edelgard? Byleth asked, getting Dorothea to choke on air. Excuse me? You two are close, right? You don't ever seem to say anything negative about her, and even since the start of the year, Edelgard admired the hard work you put in. She did. Yeah, even if you came here cause you wanted to find someone to marry, you've still given it your all. I'm sure Edelgard would be happy to be with you. See, come now, Professor, you certainly chose the weirdest times to joke around, Dorothea said, feeling a bit flushed. Before Byleth could speak, Dorothea stood up. Anyways, why don't you go hang out with everyone else? I'd hate to take up all your time. Frowning a bit at how quickly Dorothea left, Byleth couldn't help but wonder if she went a bit too far there. She didn't mean anything bad by it, but... Sighing, she focused on eating for now. Romance should be the last thing on her mind, her students were in danger, and who knows what else would happen this year. Until this was all settled, she would give it her all to keep them safe. Chapter 77, Interlude, Priyan saw. Good people of Thirdiad, lend me your ears. The voice of the King Regent, Rufus Thierry Bladded, Grand Duke of Itha, echoed out through the streets of Thirdiad, which were almost silent as its citizens gathered in the square in front of the palace, clamoring to see the king upon his stage. For too long, our proud kingdom has languished. His voice rang loud and clear, a shocking sound for many who had never even heard the regent speak. In the past decade we have suffered greatly. Pestilence, famine, and violence have ravaged our people. Bandits have run free, allowed to steal even our holiest of relics for their own cruel ends. Invaders from foreign lands have threatened what little peace we have, and even the heirs of our great houses have not been kept safe. Mere months ago, the heiress of House Galatea was even abducted by an Adrestian noble and only barely saved by the Knights of Syros, who should have never allowed such danger to come to her to begin with. We all know of the tragedy that befell our royal family, wherein my own brother was viciously murdered by the devils of Duscur. And yet despite this horrific crime, we were not brought justice. We had to seize it with our own hands. And that, my people, is why I speak to you today. He thumped his fist against the breastplate of his armor, for a moment looking exactly the picture of a grand warrior king in the eyes of the populace. I stand here with the knowledge that you have suffered. That we have suffered. For as your king, I weep for every tragedy that befalls our gracious people. And as your king, I swear an oath to you, my people, no more. No more shall we fear the violent, the cruel, and the foreign. We shall stand strong and true, for the goddess has gifted us with a most gracious opportunity. As many of you know, the Western Church betrayed Archbishop Rhea. Not many truly knew that, and there were many gasps among the crowd. What you may not have known was the true depths of their betrayal, for the bishop who led that rotted bastion of corruption was in fact a traitor to this very kingdom. For he was the cur who rallied the dogs of Duscur to murder my brother. To murder your king. Shock and horror spread through the crowd, scandalized gasps ringing out followed by angry calls. Rufus held up a hand, his head bowed, hushing the crowd. I know, my people. I understand your fury, for I feel it just as strongly. Yet we cannot falter in this time of trial. The goddess rewards the stalwart, and so it has been chosen that the Western Church be reformed. A new bishop has been selected, one who bears no sin of corruption, but has been chosen by our very own Lady Cornelia, she who saved our people from the ravages of plague. There was a smattering of applause and cheers from plants in the audience, encouraging genuine positivity among the masses as the court mage beside her king bowed her head with a humble smile. To that end, I present to you Sergei of House Gideon, the new bishop of the Western Church. The man in question wasn't especially outstanding. He had the standard brown hair of most Fodlaners and a short beard, lending him a slightly more grizzled look, particularly given the suit of silver armor he wore, his helmet held under one arm. He placed a hand on his chest and bowed to the people of Faergus, a gesture that caught many by surprise. Good people of Thirdiad, in the name of the goddess, I promise to serve you faithfully as a sword of the faith. Indeed he shall. Rufus agreed, taking center stage again, for Faergus is in need of a sword. No, not merely a sword, but a lance. One capable of piercing through the hearts of those who would do us ill. Thus I have decided Faergus shall have its lance. A new one, crafted in the honor and faith of our people. And those who wield it shall be the storm, striking with our fury at those who seek our ruin. Today, my people, I declare the formation of the Tempest Knights. The new protectors of Fodlan. He gestured again, prompting a second man forward, one in azure armor decorated with silver lightning. And the man, clad in his gleaming armor, thrust his lance skyward, its body black and its head yellow as a boom of thunder rang out and a bolt of lightning raced from the sky, striking the head and casting the surroundings in a rainbow of color. Shock turned to elation as the citizens of the kingdom saw what could only be an indication of divine favor. Cheers rang out for their king, cheers he had never once heard before. And King Rufus Thierry Bladdid smiled, for he finally had the adoration he knew he deserved. That was disgusting, Sergei commented once his helmet was back in place, hiding the revolting features of the vermin he'd had to pose as. Ah, you have no passion for theater, Ilan, Cleobulus chided, mock-pouting and earning a shudder of disgust from her colleague. I have no interest in whatever production this is meant to be, Cleobulus. I only aid you because I have a better chance of actually seeing the vengeance of our people finally be accomplished. Because you requested it. And you just want a purpose again. That's fine, I can accept that. So long as you are willing to play along with me and Rufus. Ilan sneered. Rufus? You care for the vermin's name. Ha. Ah, Ilan, you really are such a simple man. Then again, you did earn your sagehood through strength and stature. Regardless, Rufus isn't vermin, he's a pet. A domesticated beast has its uses, doesn't it? Ah, I see. And did you lay with this pet of yours yet? A flash of genuine anger crossed Cleobulus's borrowed face before she smoothed it out into a far too calm smile. Be careful, Ilan. You're not playing bodyguard anymore. This isn't Shambhala, and you're not just an up-jumped door guard with a fancy title. You have duties to uphold, and if you ever accuse me of bestiality again, I'll castrate you on the spot, so make sure you uphold those duties properly. Ilan blinked beneath his helm, thrown off by the complete lack of change in tone as his fellow sage delivered her threat, before his attention was taken by the king's arrival. Ah, what a beautiful day! Rufus said with a far bigger smile than Cornelia was used to seeing on his face. Well, aside from when he was busy with his dancers. He turned his attention towards her almost immediately upon seeing her, eager for approval. How do you think it went? They were cheering for me, certainly, but do you think it was genuine? Of course it was, my king. You did a wonderful job out there, she praised, ignoring the noise of disgust Ilan made. Thankfully Rufus didn't notice, still near euphoric from his success. Ha! Ah, what a wonderful day! Thank you, Cornelia. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. He wasn't wrong about that, but Cornelia knew when to preen and when to demur. You give me too much credit, my king. The people are merely seeing the charisma you have always had. That and the slight alterations she'd made to help his mood and keep him from being so melancholy and guilt-ridden all the time. Sure, some may call that drugging his food, but she preferred to consider it medication for his ills. She was posing as a healer, after all, so she knew what she was talking about. They are, aren't they? He laughed, unable to hide his delight. It won't be long now before the people adore me far more than they ever did Lambert. Though, right, we still need to get rid of Dimitri. Have you killed him yet? Cornelia giggled. Ah, how very vicious, my king. Do remember we need a reason to be rid of him first though. Right, why not use Patricia then? Cornelia paused. Oh. Patricia. Through her, Dimitri is related to that Adrestian princess. We're already stirring up aggression towards Adrestia, we can frame the tragedy as purely her plot to put the kingdom and the empire under the reign of her two brats. That is an interesting starting point, my king. I will keep it in mind for our plans going forward. It would be an interesting point to follow. Long-dead Patricia could work very well as a scapegoat in many respects, particularly if they leaned on Arundel as a conspirator murdered to keep the secret. Or perhaps an innocent victim of his sister's diabolical plots. Either one could work, but the main point was to turn Faerghus even further against Adrestia. Poor Thales's grand design was faltering ever since his little project diverted from his plans, wandering away without his stern hand to hold her leash, so it was up to Cleobulus to set things right. If the people of Agartha could not have their flame emperor, then she would give them a storm king. Chapter 78, An Unexpected Invasion. Thank you for coming here. This month's mission is of grave importance, Rhea stated with utmost seriousness as she looked at the professors before her. It definitely seems like it if we're getting the mission together, Manuela noted, glancing at Byleth and Hanneman. We will do our best to accomplish whatever mission you have for us, Hanneman said as Byleth nodded. Thank you. Now then, normally this mission would be one given to the knights. However, thanks to everything that happened with Tamash and the Flame Emperor, I tasked them with scouring Fodlan to find any leads on them. As such, the mission will have to fall on your students. What exactly is the mission? Byleth asked. The Almiran army is invading, and House Goneril has requested assistance. From what we were told, it's likely the largest invasion force the Almirans have used. What? Lady Rhea, you can't be serious. Hanneman exclaimed, astonished at her request. I know we just had a mock battle meant to simulate war, but sending the students to fight an actual war is a little. Manuela trailed off, not wanting to finish what she was saying. It is with a heavy heart that I give you this mission. I understand that this might be dangerous, but we cannot allow foreign invaders to desecrate Fodlan, Rhea said as her eyes hardened. If we do not stop them at the locket, then who knows how far they will be able to get. Can the other nations not assist? Byleth asked. The kingdom is still undergoing its own turmoil as they replace members of the Western Church, along with their own sudden invasion from Srang. The Empire, however, is making no move to assist, so there is no other choice. Who will be assisting us? Byleth inquired, at the ready. I will be sending what forces I can spare from the Knights of Syros, as well as whatever the Alliance themselves can spare, Rhea stated. It is my understanding that Holst Goneril will be leading the defense as well. Ah, the hero of Fodlan's locket will be there then, Hanneman noted. That does provide some measure of comfort, at least. How long do we have until we depart? Only a few days, I'm afraid. You will need to get your classes ready by the 3rd, Rhea responded. Lady Rhea, that's not much time at all, Hanneman noted, frowning deeply. It is all I can afford you. Very well, I understand this is a time of crisis. He sighed, then nodded firmly. I will do my utmost to ensure my students are prepared for what they might face. It's the least all of us could do, Manuela agreed, a rarity for her, her voice uncharacteristically serious. We'll make sure everyone makes it back safely. We will, Byleth agreed, her mindset. If her students were in danger, then she would simply have to end the war quickly. Claude breathed out a slow, tired sigh as he stared up at the ceiling of the Golden Deer's classroom. War with Almira, huh? It would be wrong to say he hadn't seen it coming. The words on the wind made it too obvious something like this was going to hit. Faergus was busy, Adrestia was selfish, and that left it up to Lester to try to beat back the barbarian hordes of his own countrymen. Wow, you look down. What's up, Claude? Hilda asked, plopping down in the seat beside him. Oh, just disappointed Cyril's addition to our class was overshadowed, he replied, grinning over at his pink-haired pal. How about you, Lady Goneril? Feeling happy we'll get to visit your big brother? Ugh, don't remind me. Now it was her turn to pout. Couldn't the Almirans pick a better time to invade? We have the ball next month. I don't want to get bogged down fighting off invaders with my overbearing brother. It probably won't last a month, so no need to worry about that. Especially if he was right about who was leading the invasion. Of his half-siblings, Shahid had an excellent mix of vanity and stubbornness that made him a massive pain to deal with, yet also slow to accept ideas like, maybe you need more than just numbers to win a fight. The invasion reeked of his type of grandstanding, which almost made Claude crack a smile before he remembered this time his older brother's arrogance would result in a lot of people dead. He let those thoughts clear from his head though, instead directing his grin towards Hilda. Speaking of, do you happen to have a date in mind for the ball? Maybe a certain winged deer who flew off to join the eagles. Hilda frowned at him, though he could tell she was amused. Winged deer? Really, Claude? What? It's an apt metaphor. Or allegory. One or the other. Sure. And how about you, huh? Do you have anyone you're interested in? She deflected, not even bothering to pretend to answer his question. Maybe a certain mercenary. You're gonna have to be more specific than that, Hill. Do you mean the mercenary in our class, the future mercenary who's also in our class, the mercenary that's teaching, the mercenary that isn't teaching, the mercenaries in town. She lightly punched his arm, pouting. You know who I mean. I do? I get it. Though don't you think Shay would get mad if I asked her dad on a date? You're doing what now? Shay asked, blinking in confusion as she stopped a few feet away from them. Oh, Claude was just talking about how he wants to ask you to the ball next month, Hilda lied without a hint of shame, fully throwing Claude under the cart in a cruel act of disproportionate retribution. Oh, sure, if you wanna. Claude blinked. He had to admit, he wasn't expecting that response. Neither was Hilda. Really? Sure, why not? We're buds and it'd probably be fun, right? She paused, her thoughts seeming to catch up with her. Wait, no, I'm mad at you. You are? For what? Hilda asked while Claude winced. He poisoned Byleth. What? When did this happen? Claude held his hands up when Hilda immediately glared at him. Hey, all right, it was a stupid move I made back before the Battle of Eagle and Lion. I didn't mean to poison her specifically, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you about it. Hilda blinked. Okay, I'm actually more surprised you apologized to me, but also what the heck, Claude? Why would you try to poison anyone to begin with? I thought you were just being weird when you talked about all that poison stuff you're into. Hilda, did you think making poisons was just my hobby or something? Yes? Duh. It's like, I make stuff sometimes, but it's not like I ever use them to try to kill people. You know there's a difference between poisons and perfumes, right? Yeah, but it could still mess someone up if I put perfume in their food. Guys. Shay spoke up, looking confused, are we still on the same topic? Oh, right, sorry Shay. Yeah, I guess Claude would be a bad choice for a date then, Hilda admitted, prompting a huff from Claude. I could still take her. Claude, you poisoned her sister. I'm pretty sure that takes you out of the running for dateable guys. Hilda paused. Actually, Shay, what's your type? Huh? I dunno. I guess, well, rule 1, they can't hurt or threaten my sister, so that means Sylvain's off the table. That got Claude and Hilda to pause. Wait, did he hurt Teach? No, he threatened her, it was a whole thing. I think he was trying to cheer me up. It's been a while since then, but I told him I'd kill him if he messed with her, so he backed off. Is that why you left the Lions? Hilda asked. Partially. I thought I'd have more fun with you guys and I have been, so it still feels like a good choice. She pointed at Claude. Still annoyed though. Right, is there something I can do to make it up to you? Make me house leader. Lawrence would kill me, Claude bluntly stated. Ah, true, he would, Shay tilted her head, as though listening to someone. Something she tended to do when she was thinking, so Hilda didn't think much of it while Claude watched her with his usual curiosity. That's a good one, alright, I've got it. Claude, hire me to go to the dance with you. Claude blinked. What? You have to pay me to be your date to the dance. He blinked again while Hilda covered a snort, before she started to giggle. So, hold on, you want me to hire you to be my date, he asked. Yup. You pay for all the fancy stuff too, the dress, the makeup, whatever else I need to look like a fancy lady having the biggest date of her life. And here's the important part, you need to fork over the gold in front of everyone there. You pay for me to get ready, then when we meet up at the ball, you pay me directly, there in front of everyone, to be your date, so everyone knows His Grace, the great Claude Von Regan, had to pay for a date to the dance. That's the most vindictive thing I've ever heard of, Claude stated with awe in his voice, genuinely impressed by the sheer audacity while Hilda outright laughed. Yeah, okay, I'll take you up on that. Then he smirked. Just so you know though, I'm not the type of guy who takes stuff like this lying down. Yeah, you're very scary. But hey, if you won't lie down for me, I'll just have to slam you into the floor, Shay teased, before glancing at Hilda, so hey, Hill, can you help out? You seem like you know what you're doing with fashion stuff. Oh, I was hoping you would ask. Hilda beamed. Any ideas to start off with? Whatever makes the biggest dent in Claude's wallet. Ah, no restrictions at all then. Awesome. Claude sighed, well aware this wasn't going to end well for him. But, well, he knew there would be consequences for screwing up. Honestly, he was surprised Lawrence hadn't shown up just from the rumor to demand he step down as house leader. Well, no reason to look a wyvern in the mouth. Think we can move along now? Maybe focus on the mission instead of the ball. It won't save you, but sure, Shay agreed. Right, hey, Cyril, what do you think about what's coming up? I think you're getting what you deserve, the young Almiran answered from his place a table over. I meant about the whole invasion thing. I don't have anything to say. Lady Rhea says we need to defend Fodlan, so I will. Really? So you don't have any problems with fighting Almirans? Should I? None of them probably remember me, Cyril admitted, though. I am worried about any kids that might get captured during the battle. Well, in that case, let's go squeeze in some training, Shay said with a grin, thankfully turning away from her plans to financially ruin Claude. You don't have to worry about them if you're strong enough to make sure nothing happens to them. Sorry, no can do, still have some chores Lady Rhea wants me to handle, Cyril responded, making Shay falter a bit as he left. Well, hopefully the other classes are up for training. I must admit, an Almiran invasion is not an event I ever thought I'd be involved in, Dimitri mused after his class got the news. I have no idea how we'll fight them. Don't overthink things, Bor. All we have to do is beat them, Felix said as if it was the simplest thing in the world. And how exactly do you plan on fighting their wyvern soldiers? Sylvain asked. Last I checked, unless you're planning on chucking your sword at them, you're not going to have much luck hitting them. They have to fly down eventually, I'll just strike them then. Still, we should make sure to be careful. We may have had time to train with Pegasus Knights, but wyverns move completely differently, Didu pointed out. He's right about that, Ingrid agreed, leaning in to join the conversation. Wyverns tend to be more aggressive in general. Pegasi will charge at the enemy if you urge them, but wyverns will actively attack whatever they register as a threat to their rider. And that's not even getting into the ones that can breathe fire. Oh wow, I didn't expect you to know so much about wyverns, Ingrid. That's really impressive, Annette complimented, prompting a slight blush from the blonde. It's not that impressive. My family's territory borders the Alliance, so we'll see wyverns every so often. More in the summer than the winter though, they really don't like the cold. Shame that probably won't be a factor over at the Locket, Sylvain pointed out. Lester tends to stay warm, right? And we're only going to start entering winter at the end of this month. So we probably won't have an advantage in that sense, Mercedes notes. Perhaps I should take up training with the bow again? Archers are supposed to be quite effective against flyers, correct? Maybe I could be useful this time then, Ash considered, though his comment went unnoticed as the discussion among his classmates continued in earnest. Meanwhile, one classroom down, a similar discussion was taking place among the students of the Black Eagles, though with a slightly different tone. And a bit more of a geographical focus. Then the mountains are being the neck, and the Locket is being the fortress. Petra asked, looking at the map spread out over her table in some confusion. Not the fortress, the fortresses. Ferdinand corrected. Fodlan's Locket is a series of fortifications designed to prevent any Almiran invader from seizing the throat. Throat? Oh, it is a throat. Why is it a throat? You know, I'm not sure about that either, Casper admitted, scratching his head. Linhard sighed. It's because some people think Fodlan looks like a dragon's head. They do. Happy leaned over, staring at the map too. I don't see it. Is it not obvious? Here, if you would look southward, into Adrestian territory, Constance explained, tracing a finger over to Fodlan's western shore, you can find Fodlan's Fangs. The lower half is where House Oaks sits, while the uppermost is where House Novelli once resided. Ah, I am remembering the Fangs, yes. Petra nodded, before tilting her head, trying to make out what actually looked fang-like of the landmass. They are meant to be fangs. Of course. The fangs of Fodlan itself. I do not have understanding. It is looking like land to me. She tried tilting her head the other way. Or maybe lips. What? Where are you seeing lips? See? This is the upper lip, and this is the lower. Or, jaws? Is jaws more correct? Well, jaws does sound more appropriate, Ferdinand commented, now scrutinizing the map too. Actually, what does that make the Bay of Inber then? Oh, perhaps instead of part of the mouth, the upper jaw would be something more like the nose? Then that would leave Havering as the upper jaw and the bay as the open mouth. What? Novelli is not a nose. Constance snapped, oddly offended. Yeah, I don't think that even works, Happy mentioned, dragons are like wyverns, right? Their nose is part of their upper jaw, like a snout. Hey, wait, horses also have that going on, Caspar realized. Does that mean horses are related to wyverns? Horses are mammals, wyverns are reptiles, Marianne spoke up, much to her own surprise. Oh. Wait, what's the difference? Mammals have hair and give live births. Reptiles have scales and lay eggs. Oh, hang on, don't birds also lay eggs? Why yes, but reptiles don't have feathers. Huh. Hey, wait, fish also have scales, does that? Caspar, you can find this information out really easily if you look in any biology book. Well fine, keep your secrets. Back on topic, Ferdinand interrupted, pointing to the map again, what in the world is this portion of the continent meant to be then? If Novelli and Oaks are the fangs, or the jaws as might be more appropriate, what does that make Hresvelg territory? Maybe a wing. Happy offered. Dragons don't have wings on their heads, right? Caspar asked. They most definitely do not, Flane affirmed while having a bit of trouble actually seeing the map due to her taller classmates being in the way. I see our classmates are taking the impending invasion well, Hubert commented with some amusement from where he stood with Lady Edelgard. They really are childish sometimes, Edelgard replied, before sighing, then again, I suppose none of us expected a foreign invasion in the middle of the year. Nor for Rhea to decide we should be involved. It is an interesting decision on her part. One might think sending several noble heirs to the front lines of a conflict with a foreign nation is a poor decision on her part. It could be, though I think it more likely she's attempting to foster unity among us. Edelgard rubbed her chin, thinking. I wonder if the tensions between Faerghus and Adrestia have shaken her complacency. Especially now that Adrestia is outright refusing to send aid to Leicester. It is a fascinating choice our dear friend the Prime Minister has decided to make. Perhaps certain elements are encouraging his decision-making. Perhaps. We might also be seeing the consequence of Aegir being left to run things. Why would he ever waste the Empire's military for the benefit of his neighbors? Particularly when, from his point of view, he'll need that military to handle Almira if they successfully occupy Leicester. Speaking of Aegir, Hubert turned his gaze towards the most annoying noble he had the misfortune to know. One who happened to have more information than Hubert happened to be comfortable with. Edelgard nodded. I know. I suppose I was so used to seeing Ferdinand as this obnoxious extension of his father that I never considered he could be an asset to my goals. That wasn't exactly what I meant, Your Highness. I know what you meant, and I said what I meant. Ferdinand would be more useful on our side than he would be if there were any unfortunate accidents. She glanced up at her retainer. That means no arranging such accidents. While I would never want to question your judgment. Don't patronize me, Hubert. We're not in the position to carelessly discard allies. We know who we can't trust, so when it becomes apparent there is someone we can't waste the opportunity on paranoia. And do you truly think Ferdinand is one such trustworthy individual? I think he is the type of person who will have issues with the choices I plan to make, but he is also someone who has seen the ideals he upholds are not being held to. Once he is entirely on our side, he will stay there, no matter what comes. She looked back towards her classmates and their continued chatter. Besides, he's not the first nobleman I've known to turn against the father he once idolized. Hubert frowned at the reminder, but he didn't have a response. Not one he would be willing to voice while they were still in public. It truly was strange, having to look at his classmates as potential assets. He didn't like how open Lady Edelgard was being lately, nor how attached she was clearly getting to their professor. The knowledge that Lysithea was also a victim of those same Crest experiments had kept him from leaping to his first instinct to silence anyone who knew of his lady's torture, but that was an unfortunate consequence of their position. He had to consider who would be beneficial, not merely remove those who would be detrimental. And he did have to give Lady Edelgard credit, she was maneuvering the Eisner sisters quite well into joining their side. Were it not for the professor's obvious distaste for the church, he would have argued against the idea far more than he had. Still, if he had to, he would take steps to ensure Lady Edelgard's dream was a reality. Even if he had to remove those in the way of it. It's strange. He paused, his thoughts disrupted by Her Highness's voice. What is, Lady Edelgard? I think I may have been too focused on Fodlan in my planning, she admitted. I didn't truly consider the foreign powers around us. I know Fodlan has been invaded before, and I can plainly see it happening now, but I didn't think they might decide to invade on a whim. Given they've amassed such a large army, I doubt it is mere whim driving their leadership, Hubert commented, though he didn't truly know anything about the invading force. Perhaps that was more of a concern than he had considered. Lady Edelgard appeared to share his thoughts. The world is much bigger than Fodlan. I don't intend to try to change other nations to fit my ideals, but we'll have to consider foreign policy in the future. Perhaps we should take this opportunity to gain the measure of our neighbors. Hubert nodded, catching her secondary meaning. Almira might be an issue down the line, one for diplomacy and perhaps defense against, but the current invasion did give them the opportunity to learn of Leicester while they traveled through it. I'll be sure to enjoy the tourism opportunities, my lady. Perhaps you could invite Bernadetta along. Hubert paused, then raised an eyebrow at his liege. Your Highness. She appears to appreciate your company, was her reply, which just furthered his confusion. He glanced over towards where the Lady Varley was sitting with Dorothea, the latter prompting the former into an actual conversation despite Bernadetta's typical difficulties. Then Bernadetta noticed his gaze, somewhat impressive considering how unaware most people he observed tended to be, and made a vaguely squeaky noise before ducking her head, something that appeared to amuse Dorothea. Your Highness, while I would never question your understanding of a situation. Just consider it, Hubert. For now though, we should start preparing for war. She smiled ruefully. It will be good practice for the future. Traveling all the way from Garreg Mach Monastery to the Fodlan's Throat would sound to most like quite the difficult journey, considering it involved going from the center of the continent all the way to one of its borders. However, with the addition of the Knights of Syros helping things along, the journey actually took no time at all, in large part because having mages that could warp people shortened travel times considerably. Not all the way though, warp magic was handy, but it couldn't span an entire continent and they needed individual mages to actually perform it correctly. Even so. Ugh, why couldn't they have used this when we were traveling in the kingdom before? Shay complained as she waited for the mages to rest up before they could warp again. Well, my guess is because you guys weren't as much of a rush, Claude noted, before he lowered his voice. Though it's also possible they might have wanted you to see the destruction Miquelan's gang caused after they got the relic weapon. Eesh. That would definitely be pretty messed up if it were true, some of those villages were razed to the ground. Though that's just a guess coming from someone who wasn't even on that mission, Claude noted. Still possible. Shay muttered. It felt like the more she learned about the church, the less she liked it. Hey, so what exactly are the Amirans anyways? Emily asked as she walked up to the two. What? You know, the people we're gonna be fighting, what's up with them? Claude and Shay exchanged a glance at one another. Well, they're our neighbors to the east of the Alliance. They've been trying to invade for quite some time, Claude explained. From my understanding, they're an expansionist kingdom, and we just happened to be next on the list for conquest. Though most of the time it seems they're just causing skirmishes. Kinda seems like they're going for more than just a skirmish this time, Shay noted. That it does, but there is some benefit to fighting off against a large force. Really? Duh, a smaller force can communicate better, Emily cut in. So we're probably going to be fighting people who can't even spread orders around well. At her words, Claude and Shay stared at her. What? I didn't expect you to be one for tactics. Hey. I'm just used to fighting in small squads from before I joined the academy. Well, our surprisingly well-informed friend here is correct. Not to mention that with a large force, you'll need to worry more about provisions and the like. Doesn't matter how many soldiers you have, if they're all starving then they can't put up a fight. Might even have some people rebel if the leader is incompetent enough, Emily muttered. That's also a possibility, though I don't think we'll have much of a chance to convince anyone of that mid-combat. Then in that case, we should take out whoever is in charge, yeah? Shay suggested. We're used to doing it on a smaller scale, but taking out a bandit leader makes the rest scatter. And even if they have commanders besides their boss, it doesn't matter if they're all busy panicking and can't get the word across. Starting to think I shouldn't even bother with planning if you two want to be in charge of tactics, Claude jokingly said. Though, you're not wrong. Elsewhere, Byleth sat at the edge of the group, keeping an eye out just in case while they waited. They should be relatively safe in Alliance territory, but relatively was the key word there. Professor, may I have a word? Glancing over, Byleth saw Mercedes approaching. Of course, she responded, gesturing for the tall blonde to sit next to her. What did you need? I wanted to apologize, Mercedes said, a sad smile on her face. I believe my little brother has caused you many problems. You have a little brother? Yes, my little brother Emil. Though you met him under a different name. Jarrett saw. Oh. Eyes widening, she stared at Mercedes. Thinking about it, I can see the resemblance. We both take after our mother, Mercedes responded with a smile. Though I was unaware until recently that he was indeed my brother. There's no need to apologize. Nonsense, Professor, I may not know how he ended like he did, but he is still my little brother. Though I imagine you know how that goes, having a little sister of your own. Were you separated from him? Yes, about 13 years ago. My mother and I left the Empire where we moved to the Kingdom. That's a long time. It is, Professor, if I can make a request? If there's ever a chance, would you allow me to speak with him? If I can, Byleth agreed as her mind started to wander. What if she had been separated from Shay for years? What if she had never met Shay? How different would their lives be? From one older sister to another, if I can help you, I will. Thank you, Professor, Mercedes replied, a soft smile on her face. I don't know if I will be able to turn him away from the path he's on, but I would like to get the chance. Byleth nodded to that, before noticing the bow the older student had slung over her shoulder. Do you plan to use that against the Amirans? Oh, yes. I believe the commonly held wisdom is that flying mounts can be felled quite well by arrows, and I do have some ability with a bow. Not much, but some. I could help you practice, Byleth offered. I wouldn't call myself a markswoman, but I know what I'm doing enough to train. Oh, really? Well, I suppose I can accept. Though I will have to decline if you are asking me to join your class. I would feel bad about leaving my friends behind. That's fine. I have a lot of students right now. She paused, tilting her head in thought. Though I wouldn't say no to gaining more. I would win most class events by default if I had every student in my class, right? Mercedes blinked, then giggled. I think there may be a rule against that, Professor. There isn't. I checked. Oh. Really? That feels like an oversight. Well, I don't think I'm allowed to poach the house leaders themselves, but anyone else is fair game. I can even recruit faculty if they're willing. Oh my, not the other professors though, right? Byleth shrugged. There's no rule against it. Though, thinking about it, I don't think there's any more class events aside from the White Heron Cup next month. And a moment passed between the two as they both imagined Dimitri and Claude having to be the ones dancing for the cup. Professor, please don't do that to them. It would be funny. Professor, please. Chapter 79, The Locket Around the Throat. Do you see that, Nader? The Yellow Mountains, the natural barrier between the glory of Almira and the cowardice of Fadlan. Prince Shahid gestured with one hand, as though he could encompass the entire mountain range in his palm from the cliff he stood atop. Do you know what the foreign curs call these mountains, Nader? The neck of Fodlan, and the fortresses there are its necklace. Locket, your highness. Shahid paused, then glanced at Nader. What was that? They call the fortresses, Fodlan's locket, the old general corrected with a slight smile. The Fodlaners call the mountains their land's throat, and the forts are its locket. That's what I said. The throat and the locket, of course. He frowned. Why a locket? Dunno. Maybe a pun on how they're locking us off from them. Shahid narrowed his eyes at Nader, then scoffed, turning back to their target in the distance. Save your humor for someone who cares, Nader. Today is my moment of glory and I won't have it be sullied by stupid jokes. Nader tried not to sigh, in large part because he knew the prince would notice if he did. Out of all the royals he had to interact with, the ones that thought they knew better about waging war than he did were always the most annoying. So is the plan still to just throw all our forces at them at once? Of course it is. Don't think of me as some ignorant noble, Nader the undefeated. I understand the flaws of Almira's past invasions, and the largest has always been limiting ourselves to simple skirmishes. We haven't made any progress in our conquest of Fodlan for centuries because we haven't fought them seriously. Skirmishes and sieges have failed, so it's high time we cut through this nonsensical stalemate and destroy the entire locket outright. Today is the day we seize Fodlan once and for all. And with my success, I shall most certainly be named king. Nader politely clapped. Great speech, your highness. You probably should have saved it for the troops though. Bah, as though I need to give any of those peons any heed. They just need to fight when I tell them to fight. Now, you, soldier, he said, pointing to the armored wyvern rider beside Nader, prepare my wyvern. We ride to war at once. What? Wait, your highness, but Shahid didn't listen, already walking off and prompting a sigh from the rider. I'm a general though, why am I getting assigned to a servant's job? Nader patted him on the shoulder and gave him a reassuring smile. Sucks to be you. Better get to work or the prince might accuse you of sabotaging the war effort. The general groaned, but got to it, leaving Nader to his place overlooking the border's fortresses, which seemed to be filled with even more activity than earlier. Heh. Looks like we have reinforcements showing up already, wonder if I might see you out here, Khalid. When I heard we would be getting reinforcements, I didn't expect it to mean I'd be hosting the heirs of all three of Fodlan's nations. Holst Sigiswald Goneril chuckled as he looked over the three house leaders, the massive heir of House Goneril standing strong and ready in front of the young, future lords. Well, welcome to Fodlan's locket. I'd offer a tour, but we don't really have time for that. Instead, I'll just thank you for coming by, and ask if my cute little sister happens to be around. Well, that wasn't what Byleth was expecting. If you mean Hilda, then she's with the rest of our class, Claude mentioned, getting Holst to look at him. Ah, you must be Claude, the new scion of House Regan. Hilda has written about you. I trust you've made sure to take care of her. For some reason, that last sentence sounded like a threat. Oh, well, I've done about as much as everyone else, Claude responded, being careful with his words. Good to hear. Now then, while I know about Claude, I have no idea about the rest of you. I don't suppose you'll care to enlighten me. Well, this is Hilda and mine's professor, Manuela Casagranda, Claude said, gesturing to the songstress. A pleasure to meet you. My name is Dmitri Alexander Bladdid, heir to the Holy Kingdom of Faerghus. The prince bowed before gesturing to Hanuman. And this is the professor of the Blue Lions, Hanuman von Essa. It is an honor to assist you. I am Edelgard von Hresvelg, future emperor of Adristria, and this is my professor, Byleth Eisner. Byleth gave a bow in response to Edelgard's introduction. Eisner, I've heard of your father, the so-called strongest knight in all the land, Holst noted before he laughed. I would love to go up against him one day. Unfortunately, he stayed behind at the monastery, Byleth answered. Rhea couldn't send everyone with us. A shame indeed, but the forces that have arrived are appreciated nonetheless. Where would you have us then, she asked, deferring to the local commander. A good question. We'll want to spread out our forces between the three main sections of our fortress here, then move to reinforce our outposts through the pass. This army is larger than normal, so the odds are we might be dealing with one of the Almiran princes instead of the usual generals. Could you elaborate on that point? Edelgard requested. Who are these usual generals? Heh, looking to learn thy enemy, huh? Well, most often we tend to deal with Nader the Undefeated, who's led quite a few skirmishes along our borders over the years. Hold on, how is he known as the Undefeated if he's never actually broken through into Fodlan? Dmitri asked, confused. Because he's never actually been defeated directly in battle, in large part because he knows when to cut his losses and avoid a fight. From my understanding, the title is half mocking and half honoring, and he has something of a reputation for being a crafty trickster among his people. The best titles always have a hint of mocking in them, Claude remarked with audible amusement, before shaking his head. Never mind that though. Do we know anything about the man leading their army? Not a clue. As I said, I think he might be a prince, but, Holst paused as a war horn blared out, and a determined look crossed his face. Right, we'll have to cut this conversation short here. It looks like the enemy is coming for us now, so we need to get to our stations immediately. I trust you can all coordinate your forces with ours well enough. We can, Byleth answered, readily and without hesitation. I would recommend the Golden Deer be stationed along with you, General Holst. As I've heard you are well acquainted with Balthus, and I imagine your sister would be equally well acquainted with how you fight, which should help her classmates better work with you. And this'll mean I'll be able to protect my sister. I like your logic, Professor. Well, that wasn't what she meant, but okay. In that case, I'll ask the Lions to help with the north, while the Eagles help with the south. Now then, let's go. Hilda. I'm so glad to see you. Holst said, a wide grin on his face as he pulled his sister into a hug. Ugh, come on Holst. Hilda complained, trying to push him off. Balti, help me. Ah, come on Hilda, you know how he is, just let him get it out of his system, Balthus said with a laugh, not wanting to get in the way of Holst. It's good to see you as well, Balthus. I trust you made sure no one has bothered my sister. Nothing you have to worry about, but there is a girl over in the Black Eagles she's quite close to, Balthus mentioned with a teasing tone. Really? Ack. No, shut up. We have an invasion to fight off. Hilda shouted, managing to pull herself free from Holst. When I had heard we would be fighting alongside General Holst, I did not imagine he would be like this, Lysithea muttered. Yeah, he seems kinda, Shay paused, trying to think, what's that polite word people use when referring to a weird noble? Crazy, Emily offered. It would be eccentric, Shay, Lawrence corrected, and though he may have his eccentricities, I assure you, we are in quite capable hands with General Holst at our side. Oh sure, he looks super strong, so I'm not gonna doubt that, Shay commented while noting how Raphael headed over to compliment Holst's muscles. Hey, is there any correlation between nobles being eccentric and strong? Because I'm noticing a lot of you tough nobles tend to be complete weirdos. I am genuinely unsure how to take that, Lawrence admitted. It means she thinks you're strong, Emily said, idly glancing at the heir of Gloucester, so you'd better prove her right today. Oh? Oh, well I certainly intend to. In fact, do keep your eyes on me today, ladies. For I shall show you the true might of Lawrence Hellman Gloucester. Oh great, you two got Lawrence going again, Leonie complained, before lightly poking Ignaz's shoulder. Come Ignaz, you're with me today. We're gonna put those archery skills of yours to good use. Huh? Oh, well, yes, we shall. Let's, win the day. Ha, that's the spirit. And with that, it was time to go to war. It wasn't the first time Shay had fought in a war against an invading nation, but she'd still been young back then and, in hindsight, hadn't really had context for what was going on and what she was actually doing to help the war effort. This time though, things were more than straightforward. The enemy was the Almiran army. They were coming from the east, and Shay and her classmates, along with the fortress's garrison, had to beat them back. Simple enough, right? Yeah, actually, it really was that simple. Which was kind of weird. Shay knew her family hadn't been on the front lines of the whole Dada Brigid war thing, they'd been at the back taking care of the forces that got in further than the main force. Scouts and deserters, in other words. So she knew her experience in war wasn't really the standard and that there was usually big tactical stuff going on that she hadn't seen on the main front, which was why it was kind of a surprise that the current invasion seemed to genuinely be a bunch of Almyran forces just throwing themselves at the locket in hopes that it would break. Is this too easy? Shay asked in the midst of combat, her swords a whirlwind as she cut through a number of Almyran infantry. She couldn't really see much of a difference between them and Fodlan infantry, in all honesty. They tended to wear more green and most of them had tanner skin, but other than that they were just kind of the standard pikemen and axemen. Is that complaining I hear? Arvel asked, their voice sardonic. Kind of. It's just, when I heard Almyran army, she ducked under a spear thrust and rewarded the pikeman who tried with a cut across the chest that sent him falling into the valley below. I thought it would be more impressive. She frowned as she weaved around another axe cut and shoved her magic sword through the fighter's face before letting it dissipate and reform in her hand, cutting out the time she'd normally need to pull it free. Maybe I should go after one of those wyvern riders, she suggested, leaping over another axeman and kicking him off the cliff in retaliation. They seem more interesting. You know, you could settle things even faster were you to simply use my power to aid you, Arvel commented as Shay started looking for one of the riders in question. Not that it was hard to spot them, there were plenty in the sky right now, it's just... Ah, dang, I think Ignatz just killed another one, Shay noted with a slight pout. Maybe I should learn how to use a bow. Or, consider this, you utilize the unique power I have granted you to destroy this entire army. I don't think I'm that strong, she replied, before dismissing her sword so she could launch a ball of mire into the midst of an enemy squad, the poisonous magic erupting outward and sending more than a few of them to the ground, writhing in pain. You are. Believe in yourself, partner, Arvel encouraged, or more specifically, believe in the power I grant you. I think I can handle it myself, I don't need. Shay? Are you talking to yourself? Shay blinked, then glanced over at a familiar blonde in blue. Oh hey Dimitri. Just, you know. Chatting with the voice in my head. The bloodied prince blinked. It didn't look like his own blood, so Shay wasn't super worried. Actually, thinking about it. Shouldn't you be in the southern part or something? Why are you over on our side? I should be in the northern section of the locket, because that is where my class was assigned. And I am in the northern section. I'm not on your side, you're on my side. Oh. To be fair to me, I was distracted. With talking to yourself. Yes. Anyway, see you. You're terrible at keeping secrets, Arvel chided as Shay sprinted off, heading towards the nearest important-looking guy in green. Hey, I wouldn't have slipped up if you didn't keep chatting in my ear. You were talking to me though. I was talking to myself. Same difference. Shay huffed before jumping up and trying to kick the bearded wyvern rider off his mount. Keyword being tried, since the scarred old guy actually batted her back with the flat of his axe. Well, looks like I've got a challenger today, the rider said with a grin. You think you're good enough to defeat the undefeated, kid? Shay blinked. Oh. You're the guy. The Nardal guy. Do you mean Nader? Yes. That. The enemy commander. Ha. Well, it's good to hear my reputation still precedes me, even if you got the name wrong the first time. Though, knowing what you know, do you still want to go up against me, girl? Hell yeah I do. Beating the unbeaten sounds like a fun idea. Plus it'll boost my reputation a whole lot and that's always good to do in the mercenary business. You're a mercenary, huh? Well, don't say I didn't warn you. He grinned, before his wyvern fully lunged for Shay, its jaws snapping right where she would have been if she hadn't vanished in a flash of purple light. Nader had a moment of his eyes to widen before he turned and caught her blade on his axe, the grin on his face getting all the bigger when he noticed the young woman on the back of his wyvern. Ha! Interesting trick. He shoved backward while urging his wyvern to twist, knocking the girl off balance while he swung his axe towards her head. She ducked, much to his amusement, before yelping when his wyvern bucked and sent her back to the ground. But not one I'd recommend trying again. Wyverns get testy when you hop on them without permission. To punctuate his point, his wyvern swung its tail at her, catching the girl in the chest and sending her across the ground with a pained grunt. Ow, ow, ouch, that might have been a rib, Shay muttered to herself as she pushed herself back up. Getting hit by a wyvern sucks, good to know. Right, enough of this, Arvel complained, definitely annoyed. Use my power, now, or this man is going to beat you. You good to keep going, girl? Nader called out, grinning at the stubborn glint in the young woman's eyes. He could always appreciate someone willing to give it their all, even if he had a reputation to uphold. You bet, old man. This isn't enough to put me down. He couldn't help but laugh. And here he thought this battle wouldn't have any fun to it. All right then. Ready or not, here I. Then he raised his shield, catching the arrow that was going right for his head. Sorry to interrupt, Claude apologized as he stepped forward, another arrow already knocked. I was just looking for my wayward classmate. Oh, hey Claude. Shay grinned, whatever annoyance she might have felt at having her fight interrupted fading when she noticed her friend. You know I didn't need the rescue, right? Oh I know, I just need to make sure you actually remember what we're here for. Nader, there isn't the priority, remember. He isn't? But he's the unbeaten guy. Undefeated. Nader called out. Yeah, that. Yes, but he's not actually the one we're supposed to take down, Claude explained. That would be Prince Shahid, who's on the other side of the valley, and who I'm pretty sure Teach is already getting towards. Huh, really? Shay shrugged. Well that's fine, Byleth can have that prince guy, I want to fight Sir Undefeated over here. She paused. Hey, is Undefeated your actual surname? Shay. It is, actually. Nader answered, his amusement growing because he fully recognized Khalid, along with noting how protectively the young prince in hiding was standing by that friend of his. If you earn an epithet in Almira, it's basically your surname from then on. Otherwise you would just go by a patronym, such as Nader, son of Nazim, or even by your home city's name. Oh really? Huh, that's kind of neat. So I guess I would be Shay, daughter of Geralt. Shay tilted her head, her attention now caught by this subject. Would it be the same as how noble houses use Von? Like Lysathea von Ordelia? Sounds about right, sure. Though we use L, not Von. Makes sense. That's pretty neat, huh Claude? Claude, meanwhile, was trying his best not to sigh, especially with how much amusement Nader was already radiating. Not to interrupt the cultural exchange, but we really should be getting back to the fight. Oh, yeah, we should. Shay straightened, a grin on her face as she pointed her sword towards Nader. You ready, old man? Nah, I'm good. Then her grip nearly faltered as she blinked. Huh? Wait, you're good. Yup. I know when the odds are against me, and it feels like the tide of battle is already turning here. Besides, I'd hate to get in the way of young love. He grinned. See you around, kids. And with that, his wyvern took off, soaring into the sky far faster than Shay expected. Well damn, I guess he really does run when things get tough. That kind of makes the undefeated title lamer. I suppose, but I figure it'll just make it all the more satisfying for whoever finally beats him, Claude commented, before glancing at Shay. So how are you doing? You took a nasty hit there. I'm fine, I heal quick. Oh. Never mind that, come on. We gotta go get to that prince guy. Claude blinked, then felt a grin come to his face at his ridiculous classmate's immediate turn. I thought you were fine leaving it to Teach. That was when I thought I could beat the undefeated. Now we gotta go beat the prince guy or she's gonna get ahead of me again. Amazing logic. Alright, let's go kick the crap out of Shahid. Yeah, let's. Shay agreed, before grabbing Claude's arm and pulling him along, looking far too excited at the thought of taking down the enemy leader and kind of forgetting how many troops would be between them and him. Still, Claude was willing to indulge her whims. He owed his older brother a few good hits too, at the very least. Assuming the jerk even recognized him. So Shay heard voices too. Huh. Dimitri should probably be focused on the battlefield and not so much that sudden revelation, but by this point in time he had already discovered the benefits of multitasking and, as such, could focus half his attention on cutting through the foes in front of him, and half on the surprising discovery that he wasn't alone in hearing voices. It was a strangely comforting thought, though one that was largely being drowned out by those very same voices he always heard, which were clamoring all the louder at being in the midst of combat. "Enjoying yourself, Thor?" Felix sneered as he cut down a soldier near him. "You look happy." "Not for the reason you think, Felix," Dmitri replied, before pointing his spear forward. "Lions, push forward. We're breaking through the enemy lines." "Got it. Understood." Sylvain and Ingrid replied together as they rode their steeds into the enemy infantry. Sylvain's destrier crashed through the Almirans' offensive line, scattering footmen before he crushed what archers there were, so Ingrid could swoop in and run through one of the enemy commanders with her own lance. She wasn't the only Pegasus Knight in the sky going up against the Almiran Wyvern Riders, though she was the only one in Faerghus Blue instead of Leicester Yellow. Thankfully, their back line of archers were keeping most of the Almiran Wyverns at bay, when they weren't being shot down outright. Ash and Mercedes were certainly helpful in that respect, as were the archers from the other houses. There was a slight concern about where the bodies of those wyverns would land when they were shot down, though Dmitri was fairly certain no one on their side had been crushed yet. He couldn't say the same for one unfortunate Almiran who was outright flattened by a wyvern corpse landing on top of him. Curiously, he was pretty sure he heard someone shout something about a twofer at that moment, though he wasn't completely certain if he heard right. It didn't sound like one of his voices, but, well, never mind that. At the present moment, they were pushing through the enemy well enough, with their cavalry leading the charge and Didu at his side to help push forward with a massive shield that barreled over anyone in the heavily armored Duskuran's way. "All right, looks like we've got this outpost recaptured," Sylvain called out from up ahead as they seized another stronghold. "Ingrid, any eyes on the enemy commander?" "I think so. I can see a man in gold fighting against Edelgard and Professor Eisner." Dmitri paused at that information, then quickly started moving in the indicated direction. "Hey! Where are you going, Thor?" Felix called out after him, though Dmitri didn't slow his pace. "If we can end the fight now, we should. Keep the outpost secure, I'm going to back up the Professor and Edelgard," he shouted back while hurrying onward. Meanwhile, Edelgard had to say that her first meeting with Almiran royalty wasn't really going well for future diplomatic prospects. Not because she was opposed to turning a former enemy into an ally, but, "Ugh, how dare you filthy worms aim your blades at the future king of Almira." The apparent prince scowled, swinging his axe down at them as he flew by. "Surrender now. Your forces are being defeated all across the pass, there is no chance of you winning," Edelgard called out, dodging his strike as she raised her shield to block arrows from a different rider. "Swine like you should be silent. You shouldn't even be here. I was told there would be no reinforcements from the kingdom or empire." The prince yelled, almost making Edelgard drop her guard in surprise at what he said. Who in the world had given him that information? "He's not making this easy," Byleth muttered, getting Edelgard to focus. "His guards certainly aren't," Edelgard responded, looking at the two archers on wyverns with him. "Perhaps we shouldn't have gone on ahead without proper long-ranged support. You're the one who decided not to stay behind. As if I would allow you to fight on your own." That prompted a small smile from Byleth before she moved behind Edelgard, who deflected another arrow shot with her shield. "Right, those two need to go. I might need you on defense. Can you keep me covered?" "Certainly," Edelgard replied, her eyes moving to track the wyvern riders circling around them. "Great. When he gets low again, we're going on the attack." "Understood. Filthy barbarians, I'll take your heads myself," Shahid snapped, urging his wyvern into a dive at the two women, only for the white-haired one to charge straight at him. His eyes widened at the audacity, but he was still covered. Then a pair of thunderbolts crashed down on the generals guarding him. Byleth took advantage immediately, swinging the sword of the Creator out and using the whip-like sword's reach to cut straight through one of the armored guards before directing her attention to the second as Edelgard leapt and slammed her axe straight into Shahid, who just barely managed to bring his own axe up so she didn't fully cleave into his chest. As it was, he went crashing to the ground as his wyvern continued to fly, the scaly beast not noticing it lost its rider until about a second later. To its credit, it did whirl back to try to retrieve him, only to notice Byleth further electrocuting the second wyvern archer until both he and his mount collapsed in the dirt. Then Byleth turned her attention to the wyvern, who felt a sudden chill go up its spine before it elected to settle on the ground and chirp to show submission to the greater dragon in front of it. Huh. That's different, Byleth noted, before glancing at her student. Good work. Is he dead? GGHH, it will take more than that to kill me. Shahid growled as he pushed himself to his feet. The prince was scuffed and dirty, but he still held his axe in hand and looked determined to keep going. You ignorant wretches. Do you have any idea who you're up against? I am the great Prince Shahid of Almira. Good to know, Your Highness, Edelgard replied, her tone only slightly mocking. Then allow me to introduce myself in turn. I am Edelgard von Hresvelg, the Imperial Princess of Adrestia. I do hope facing another royal might soothe that wounded ego of yours before I take your head. Shahid blinked. You're a princess? No, that can't be right. You Fodlaners would never send one of your royals to fight. You're too cowardly. And yet, here I am. Now lay down your arms and submit to capture or else ready yourself for death. That was when Shay drop-kicked the foreign prince in the face. Edelgard blinked at the sudden flash of purple before recognizing the younger Eisner sister, who kicked off of Shahid's face in a fairly well-done backflip, landing solidly on the ground while he crashed into the dirt with a pained grunt. Woo. Got him. Shay turned, pointing directly at Byleth. You see that, Bye. I took out the enemy commander. I'm the older sister now. We're still doing that? Byleth asked. I thought Manuela proved you were younger. That doesn't count. Honor the bet. Byleth sighed. Fine, you're older. Yes. Shay pumped her fists with a huge smile on her face. Finally. Vindication. That's not what that word means, Edelgard commented, honestly baffled by whatever that was supposed to be. I'm sure it's fine to let Shay celebrate, right? Claude commented as he walked up, keeping an eye towards the sky for any potential ambushes. So, you got the guy. I got the guy. Shay confirmed. Then I guess that makes the Golden Deer the winners this time around. Edelgard sighed, pressing a hand to her face in exasperation. You can't be serious. As serious as a snake in a box. And that's not even including how Shay here went up against Nader the undefeated. I'm pretty sure that makes her the most valued participant for today, right? Byleth paused. You went up against the undefeated. Oh, yup, I did. Well, we did, Claude kinda helped, Shay confirmed. Huh. Did you beat him? It was a tie. I wouldn't say that. I'm pretty sure I was winning by the time your boyfriend showed up, Nader commented, prompting everyone to turn towards the Almiran general, who grinned down at them from atop his wyvern. In fact, didn't Aza here beat you? I seem to recall her tail knocking you out. Hey, I wasn't knocked out. Shay protested, frowning. Knocked you over there. Either way, I wouldn't count it as a tie. Do you need something, Sir Undefeated? Edelgard asked, keeping a firm grip on her axe as she readied herself for another fight. That I do. As much as I agree the boy here made some poor decisions, he's still a prince of Almira, and the king would get real annoyed with me if I didn't come back with him, Nader explained with a grin, so, if you wouldn't mind letting me take him back. I wouldn't say that decision is up to me. I am here to help fight off your invasion, nothing more. She glanced over at her fellow house leader. What would you want to do with him, Claude? Oh wow, you're actually deferring to me? Never thought I'd see the day. If you'd rather mock me, I wouldn't mind going with my original plan of taking his head. Heh, no, you're right, I should take this more seriously. Claude stepped forward, keeping his bow still in hand. So, Nader, you promise to call your men off if we let you take the prince? Sure I will. This attack of ours was Prince Shahid's plan, so I'm not interested in carrying on his work when I could just take the brat, the prince, home. That seems rather lenient for someone who decided to invade another nation, Edelgard noted. Returning in disgrace after failing to make any gains while also wasting time, resources, and manpower isn't exactly kind to him either. Nader grinned. It also puts the blame on him for returning back a failure instead of making him a valiant prince who fell in battle against the cravens of Fodlan. Which would demand an actual response from our king. And I imagine he's gotta be at least slightly more competent than his son here, Claude commented, prompting a laugh from Nader. I would sure hope so. Very well then. Edelgard still kept her axe in hand and her shield up, but she took a step back and settled, letting Nader set his own wyvern down so he could grab the unconscious Shahid by the scruff and set him on the saddle, before taking a horn and blowing it 3 times, the sound echoing through the pass as the Amirans registered its meaning and immediately broke off from whatever fights they were in the middle of, only striking back if any of the Fodlan forces tried to hit them while they all moved to retreat. Ah, see? That settled pretty nicely, Claude said with another grin. Didn't it? Anyways, I imagine I won't be seeing most of you around after this, considering you're from further west, but if I do, I'll make sure to say hi, Nader said as he climbed back into his saddle. Oh, and hey, you, Regan kid. Claude paused, raising an eyebrow. Yeah. Nice choice in ladies. And with that, Nader took off. Well, he wasn't what I was expecting when I heard of an undefeated Almiran general, Edelgard commented. Oh? Were you thinking he'd be some wild savage? Claude asked. No, I thought he would be more serious. More like an Adrestian general, essentially, though I suppose I could compare him to Count Berglis and see some resemblance. Heh. I think he'd take the comparison as a compliment. Maybe not the serious part though. Yes, he did seem quite casual for an enemy general. And notably interested in your love life. He was just joking. Not something anyone should take seriously, right Shay? Oh, I can talk now? I thought you guys were still having a royal discussion thing, she said, pushing herself up from where she'd decided to sit down on the ground. Is that why you were being quiet? Course. Gotta let the nobles talk when they're being all serious. It's a decent rule, avoids causing offense, Byleth explained as she walked up, standing in between Shay and Claude, before making a very obvious, I'm watching you, gesture towards Claude, much to his obvious concern and Edelgard's equally obvious amusement. I suppose that's fair. Though I must say, this force was easier than I expected. It goes to show how lacking the enemy will be if they have a weak commander, Edelgard noted. Yeah, they likely would have been more trouble near the start of the year, but you've all grown strong. Especially you, Edelgard. I wouldn't be surprised if you could take me in a fight now. There's no need for flattery, Professor. Bet you're happy you have my permission, Edelgard. Shay teased, grinning. Permission for what? Byleth asked. Oh just something that only a family member can give, Claude said with an amused grin. Please be silent, Claude, Edelgard grumbled. Dimitri, meanwhile, came to a stop in the empty clearing right on time to see whatever he was seeing going on between the Eisner sisters and his fellow house leaders. Is the battle over? Chapter 80, Rest, Recuperation, and Revelation. Holst sighed. Balthus, my old friend, the world never turns out the way you expected it to. Whoa, that's a heavy way to start this conversation, Balthus commented, raising an eyebrow at his friend as they sat together in the Locketts' dining hall, 2 mugs of mead set on the table for them. What happened? It's Hilda, Balthus. My adorable little sister is growing up. He sighed deeply. And worse, she has someone she's interested in. Oh, you mean Marianne? Yeah, I noticed those two hanging out a lot. Yes, it's extremely obvious. He sighed again. It's a problem, Balthus. And one I don't know how to solve. What? How's it a problem if Hilda likes another girl? No, not that part. The part where I had an entire speech ready for whoever Hilda wants to marry. I was going to make it clear to any suitors that they would have to beat me in a fight if they wanted her hand, but have you seen Marianne? I would feel like a monster trying to fight a girl like that. Ah, I see the problem now. Yeah, you would look like the worst kind of asshole if you tried to fight her. Right. Holst sighed, even deeper. Here I thought I would get to have the fun of terrifying some young upstart, but instead Hilda winds up falling for a sweet, shy girl who loves animals. Which, yes, I can understand why that would happen, and it warms my heart to see her stepping up to take care of her, but it completely threw off my entire plan. Isn't that a good thing? At least you're sure she'll be with someone who won't hurt her, right? It is, but still. Well, think of it this way. If they do get married, you'll have two sisters to spoil. Holst paused. Balthus, you're a genius. Hell yeah, I am. Here, let's drink to celebrate. You've got the next dozen rounds, right? Of course, my friend. Let's drink the night away in celebration. Well, this was certainly an unusual experience, Hanneman remarked as he stirred his tea. The Crest Scholar sat with his fellow professors at the moment, going over their recent experience in repelling an invasion and making sure their students had all made it out fine. Which they had, thankfully. While I've had some unusual missions assigned in my day, this is the first I've had to aid in fending off foreign invaders. It is certainly something, Manuela agreed with a frown. I don't know what Lady Rhea was thinking, sending these kids out to face an entire force of Amirans. Not just a mere force, Manuela, the largest army the Amirans have fielded in generations. She frowned. Yes, I know, you don't need to correct me, you pompous pedant. What? I was merely adding onto. How much longer are we planning to stay here? Byleth interrupted in hopes of cutting off the argument before it could start. Huh? Oh, well, I believe the plan, according to General Holst, is for us to remain in the area for at least 3 days to ensure the Almiran army really has retreated and isn't simply setting up for another attack, Hanneman explained. While they did take significant losses, he does believe they might have enough of a force to potentially mount a second attack if pushed into it, so keeping on guard and nearby for a time would be reasonable. Really though, we should take this as an opportunity, Manuela added, smiling again. After all, here we are in the Alliance, why not take this time to let our students explore? While my class might originally come from here, your two classes are filled with students foreign to Leicester, so why not let them look around? I can see the value in that suggestion, though we should make sure only some go around at a time, in case the Amirans do try to attack again, Byleth noted. It probably wasn't a big concern, but there was still the possibility. Especially considering that Princess Wyvern had been following her around until she asked the Leicester guards to take it in. For all she knew, Shahid would want it back. We should make sure they're being careful as well, Hanneman added. The last thing we need is for them to get lost in a city they know nothing about. Byleth should make sure Shay didn't go wandering around. Knowing her, she might end up getting lost in Almira. Though, now she was wondering what her older sister was doing now. And there they were, exhausted as they fought against the Almiran prince and his horde of generals, fighting tooth and nail yet in need of a rescue. Which is when I arrived, striking a blow on the prince, and getting the Amirans to retreat in an attempt to rescue their prince. Shay boasted to the crowd of classmates listening to her as she stood atop a table in the Lockett's mess hall. Even the undefeated turned tail at the sight of me. Wow, I knew you were impressive, but I didn't know you were that strong, Ignatz said, marveling at her story. Isn't that undefeated guy someone who always runs away though? Doesn't sound that impressive to me if he's the type to always flee, Emily commented. Doesn't that mean he ran away cause he thought he was about to be defeated? Ash suggested. From what I've heard, even General Holst thinks of him as a rival. Wait, really? Shay asked, a bit surprised. Does that mean I'm as strong as Holst? That prompted a laugh from Hilda, who was sitting beside Marianne as one might expect. Sure you are, Shay. Why don't you go ask my brother to spar so you can prove it? Oh sure, that sounds like a great idea. Where is General Holst anyway? Is it General, or Lord Holst? Ignatz asked, though his question was ignored as Hilda shrugged. He's probably drinking with Balti. I'm pretty sure I saw those two go off together earlier and that means they're for sure gonna do something stupid. They might be, catching up. Marianne suggested, looking a little worried to be speaking up at all amid all the other students. They were good friends, right? Oh sure, best friends for years now, and that means I know what I'm talking about when I say they're going to do something stupid now that they're together again. Probably some big celebration or something. Like what we're having? Ash asked. No, we're just hanging out. I'm talking about doing something dumb like rushing off to take out an entire bandit camp with just their fists to prove that they can. Oh, or trying to wrestle a giant crawler. Wait, you can wrestle a crawler? Shay asked, immediately looking interested. You can wrestle anything so long as you've got the muscles for it, Raphael declared from further down the table. Good point. Don't go find a crawler to wrestle, Lysithea groaned. I'm sure I can win, Shay insisted, prompting a glare from the shorter girl. Shay, do not go try to wrestle a crawler. Whoa, you're gonna wrestle a crawler? Casper asked, excitement shining in his eyes as he overheard them. Can I join in? Sure. The more the merrier, Shay answered. Lysithea let out a frustrated groan as she let her head drop into her hands, earning her a pat on the back from Leonie. Hey, cheer up, I'm sure Byleth will step in before she actually does anything that stupid. Humph. I suppose, she glanced at Leonie. I have to admit, I am surprised you are not also jumping to try this brilliant idea. I thought you were all for competitions. I mean, I am, but I'm smart enough to see how bad of an idea that is. Especially when Byleth finds out. Ha. Not like she can do anything about it. I took out the enemy commander, so that makes me the older sister. Shay boasted, grinning even while everyone stared at her. It's a thing her and her sister do, Claude explained, since Shay clearly wasn't going to. Since Shay, and by extension the Golden Deer, won the fight, she gets to be the big sister even if she's way younger. Oh, I get it. Maya and I used to do something similar, Raphael said with a laugh. Exactly. And as the older sister, that means I'm the one in charge. I wonder if that means I'm the professor now. Nah, that sounds like too much trouble. Why did it have to be someone like her? Lysithea groaned out as she buried her face in her hands. Yes, I must admit, Shay is quite strong, but it is vexing that my skills aren't at her level, Lawrence muttered, completely misunderstanding Lysithea's complaints and getting the mage to groan again. Dorothea, is everything okay? Edelgard asked upon finding her friend up on the ramparts, staring out at the pass. I assumed you would be celebrating with everyone else. The same could be said for you, Edie, the songstress responded with a tired smile as she pushed herself off the wall she was leaning over. I thought a house leader was supposed to share in the festivities. Just wanted to get some fresh air, Edelgard lied as she examined the ramparts. If she ever had to take the locket by force, it would be necessary to know of any weaknesses. Even if it was meant to block off Almiran invasions, it was still a fortress, and that made it important to hold. Well, I guess we can just say I did too, Dorothea remarked, looking out towards the pass again. You know, I had heard the Almirans always celebrate a battle, even if they lose, but I didn't think it was true. Looking out into the distant valleys as well, Edelgard could hear faint revelry happening beyond the pass. If it was able to reach them from there, then it likely meant the celebration was a loud one. Yes, I don't quite understand why they do that myself. I certainly wouldn't be in the mood to celebrate if I was in their shoes. They lost so many people, yet they're acting as if nothing happened. As if we didn't kill however many of their people fighting them off. Yes, it seems they view death quite differently from the people of Fodlan, Edelgard noted. Yeah. They celebrate dying, while we celebrate killing, Dorothea muttered bitterly, catching Edelgard off guard. Dorothea. Come on Edie, you have to see what I mean. Ever since our first month at the monastery, we've had to kill someone on each mission, and even on our off month, you and the professor ended up having to deal with that stuff with the Abyss. Dorothea sighed. I'm starting to feel out of my depth here. You are. Dorothea paused, then looked over at her house leader. Edie. You are out of your depth here, Dorothea, Edelgard reiterated, her tone even and serious as she faced her friend. You're a singer looking for a spouse. I have no issue with your profession or your goal, and I even admire you for taking these steps outside what most would consider your station in life, but you were not trained for this sort of life. By all rights, you should have the ability to achieve success on your obvious merits and live a comfortable life of your choosing based on them, yet we do not live in a world that allows for that. You should be able to attend this academy, Learn what you wish, and succeed in your goal of finding a wealthy spouse capable of caring for you without being dragged into conflicts where you are forced to kill others, yet you are. I do not think that is fair, yet it is the reality we are faced with. I was trained to be able to take a life. Not only that, but I was trained to send others to their deaths for the greater good of the empire. This is a field I find myself unfortunately comfortable with, while I can see you are only growing more discomfited with each mission you are forced on. As such, I am willing to offer you an out. Dorothea frowned, but didn't reply. Taking her silence as a go-ahead, Edelgard continued. For all future missions, however many there may be, I am willing to, in essence, assign you to the backline where you will be out of combat. I understand it is not fully my choice in this matter, but I am certain I can convince our professor if... I'm going to stop you there, Edie, Dorothea interrupted, holding up a hand. I'm not taking that offer. Are you certain? Edelgard's gaze was unflinching. Intimidating, almost. You have made it clear that you do not wish to kill. I could spare you of that. You could, but I don't want you to. I'm not about to let my friends fight without me being there to help them. I might not like killing, but I hate the idea of leaving the people I care about in danger even more. You really are strong, Dorothea, Edelgard said, turning her gaze away from the songstress. If I were in your position, I likely would have ran away long ago. And I wouldn't blame you if you did, Dorothea responded, but being the emperor means you can't really do that, I suppose. That it doesn't, Edelgard admitted. But you don't let that break you, Dorothea noted with a smile. If I were in your position, I likely would have crumbled long ago. Yet here you are, ready to lead us into battle alongside the professor, with grand ambitions waiting for you beyond that. Though for you, I suppose doing away with the nobility isn't that grand, miss, it's only been 1200 years. Edelgard huffed at Dorothea's attempt at imitating her, trying to hide her faint amusement. If something can be created, it can just as easily be destroyed. I suppose so. Especially if you're the one going after it. To Dorothea's surprise, Edelgard actually chuckled in response to her reply. You're kind to say so. I think you are better than I at attaining what you want though, she sighed, before turning to the songstress with a smile. I wish you the best of luck in pursuing our professor. Of all the things Edelgard could have been leading up to, that was the last one Dorothea could have expected. Excuse me. I understand it may not be the life you were hoping for, but I'm sure No, wait, Edie, back up. Why are you wishing me luck? Because I want to see my professor and my friend happy. That, Edie, I'm not pursuing her, I've been trying to help you and her get together. Excuse me? Edelgard asked, very surprised. Didn't the professor say she was willing to take care of you after you left the academy? That was a misunderstanding. Dorothea responded, albeit with her cheeks flushing. Edie, you know how the professor is, right? With how she doesn't really emote well at times. Yes. She told me she doesn't understand what romantic love is supposed to feel like. So while those comments might have been sincere, it wasn't supposed to be romantic on her part, Dorothea explained, so as it stands, there is nothing between us going on. Especially since, as I've said, I've tried nudging her towards you. Oh, Edelgard mumbled, getting Dorothea to sigh with a slight annoyance. Though I should point out that she also said she has no interest in pursuing romance until the academy year ends, so if you do want to go for it, you'll have to wait. Blushing a bit, Edelgard composed herself. Thank you for informing me of that. Though, if I am being honest, I have no intention of pursuing her. I would prefer not to talk about it, but there are reasons for why we would not work together. So there is no need for you to sacrifice your feelings for my sake. You know, you're really undercutting my attempts to help you realize your feelings. Edelgard frowned. I do not need to, I am well aware of my feelings, it is simply not possible. Oh, really? So you think there's no chance at all between you two? Those tea times you share all the time aren't evidence she likes spending her time with you. I do believe she has also had tea with many students, including you. And I doubt I've ever been able to hold her attention like you did when you sang for her. Which I did because it was her birthday, much like how you got her that pendant, which she's worn every day since. She has also worn that headband you picked out for her every day as well. Speaking of every day, I do recall you visiting her every day while she was recovering from her wounds, did you not? You say that as if I was the only one. And if we're talking about that, weren't you the one who carried her all the way to the infirmary? That's because Professor Manuela needed someone to help her. Edelgard replied, her face getting all the redder. Silence fell over the two for a moment, before Dorothea started to giggle. What are we even doing? I see what you mean. Things have gotten a bit out of hand here. It is quite silly to think that we were just trying to argue that the other likes the professor more. It really is. Normally in productions, arguments like these usually involve the two girls saying they like the person more. It also doesn't involve said person saying the two girls should get together instead. Dorothea giggled again, her cheeks slightly pink. Excuse me? Edelgard asked, blushing at the idea. Oh, there you two are. Cut in a new voice, getting the two students to look over and see Byleth coming up the stairs of the ramparts. Professor? Did you need something? I was just checking up on everyone. As she said that, she glanced between the two. Sorry for interrupting. With that, she gave the two a small thumbs up, before walking back down. It seems our professor might have misunderstood something, Dorothea muttered, her own face warming. Quite. Edelgard took a breath in another attempt to compose herself, though, with everything that had just been brought up, she felt her eyes drifting towards Dorothea for a moment and simply studied her. She really was quite impressive in many respects. Well, I think that managed to pull me from my funk well enough. Why don't we rejoin the party? Dorothea offered, before noticing Edelgard's gaze still on her. Edie. Yes, we should rejoin everyone. It is important to be social, she agreed before moving to do exactly that and heading back down the stairs at a not quite hurried pace. Heh. Dorothea giggled, her face warming again as an idle thought crossed her mind. Namely that, well, it wasn't unusual for Adrestian emperors to have multiple consorts. She wouldn't bring that up to Edie though, at least not at the moment. The poor girl might combust. Sighing, Emily leaned back in her chair. When she had heard they would be fighting off an army, she had assumed it would be a grand glorious battle where she could soak in the blood of those she slayed. While she was able to do that last part, the battle was also pathetically quick. It didn't help that now she had to wait around in case they attacked again. A part of her was hoping they did, especially since Hilda's older brother and his friend had apparently given themselves food poisoning by eating mushrooms. Less allies on her side meant she was able to kill more. Not like her current classmates were dead weight either. Shay was practically a whirlwind of death, and Lysithea, despite being a tiny mage, had the magic to back up her words. While she would never pursue muscles like that wall of a person did, Raphael also proved himself to be the powerhouse, and while Hilda might not be able to do stuff on her own, she recognized how strong the hidden Agarthan was. Maybe if things did turn sour here, it might be good to pursue a mercenary life like Leonie? The commoner was quite skilled, and she would likely be joining Shay's group when they graduated. At the very least, she had no intention of becoming a knight like Ignatz, especially since that boy, for all his words, didn't seem eager to do so. Though would it be better to throw her luck in with a noble? Lawrence was a fool, but he had his uses. At the very least, if she sided with Lawrence, she wouldn't be as much of a target than if she sided with Claude. It was only a matter of time before her people went after the leaders of the respective nations. As smart as he was, there was only so much the archer could do against them. Hello, Emily, how are you doing? Blinking as she was brought out of her thoughts, she looked over to see Byleth standing nearby. Emily sighed, letting her frustration show at the sight of the professor. What do you want? I wanted to see how you were doing. And why exactly are you doing that? Last I checked, I'm not your student anymore. But you were before, and even if you're not, I still want to check up on you, Byleth said, nodding as if it was that simple. Well, I'm doing fine. There, you happy? She asked mockingly. I am. I'm happy you've made friends. That gave Emily pause. Friends. What was she talking about? The golden deer weren't her friends, they were just valuable allies she needed in case things turned bad. That gave her further pause. Did she just seriously consider Fodlaners allies? That couldn't be true, they were just beasts, right? Right, mere beasts who were only of use to her as far as she could benefit from them, of course. The only reason she was siding with them was because, well, it wasn't as though she was even siding with them, she was using them. Manipulating them to her own ends, like a proper Agarthan. What did it even mean to be a proper Agarthan? Thales was dead, Solon was dead, was her plan really to just try to hide from Bias? Shouldn't she at least try to avenge, but, then, did she really care to? The more distance she had from them, the more she couldn't help but think of how little either of the sages actually regarded her. Cronia knew she should be loyal, but, she was loyal. Of course she was loyal. But everyone she should be loyal to was dead. The thought of working for Cleobulus turned her stomach, and while Mycon was her superior, she couldn't stop herself from seeing him as lower after seeing how readily he followed Thales's orders over the years. He just didn't feel like a leader. Did Claude? Are you feeling okay? Byleth asked. Gah. Why are you still here? Emily Yelp demanded to know. Because she didn't yelp, not to some big-eyed weirdo staring at her. You lapsed into silence and made some weird facial expressions, so I was just waiting for you to talk again. You didn't, so I decided to. That's weird. You're weird. I know. So how are you feeling? Why do you care so much? And don't give me that, you were my student, thing. There has to be more than that. I guess there's something extra. Aha, there it was. Ulterior motives. Wait, she didn't know Cronia was Agarthan, did she? Who would have even told her? Shay? No, Shay was an idiot, she didn't even know. I care about you because you were my student. I also care because you're Shay's friend. There is something extra though, and it's that I killed your uncle. My uncle, who the hell was that referring to? Thales? Thales wasn't her uncle, he was, what even was Thales to her? Ugh, this was so much easier when she could just follow orders and indulge in murder. Alright, what are you talking about? A few years ago, a noble in Inver attempted to prey upon my sister and I. His name was Andrei Korsh. I stabbed him to death in retaliation, and I later learned he was your uncle. You stabbed a noble to death in the middle of a city? Emily asked, a little impressed. Which was probably the wrong emotion to be showing given the confused look Byleth gave her. I mean, oh no, my, poor Uncle Andres, oh no. Andre. Huh? Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, sure, you did that. Congrats. This is not going the way I expected it to. Yeah, well, that makes two of us. I have no idea what you're expecting from me here. To be clear, you are not troubled because of what happened to your uncle. No? Look, Professor, I don't know what you're talking about and I don't care. I'm kind of impressed you actually stabbed someone to death in Inver and got away with it. That city's pretty big and populated, though not too hard to get away with if you pick the right location. Where'd you shank him anyway? The middle of a busy street. Emily whistled, genuinely impressed. Wow. And you were how old when this happened? You said it was a few years ago, right? I believe I was 14 at the time. Or 15. It was, this doesn't bother you at all. You were 14? Huh, 14 was pretty young for Fodlaners, right? Actually, yeah, that was about a year younger than Lysathea and she was tiny. Oh, or the same age as that new kid, Cyril. Huh. That is pretty impressive, gotta admit. Thank you. Why couldn't you have led with that? Would have found your classes way more interesting if you were focusing on that stuff instead. The purpose of class is to get better at stabbing, not to tell stories about stabbing. She paused. And other things. It's good to get better at many different things so you're well-rounded and capable. Yeah, save the lectures for class. Which I'm not in, so no lecturing me for you, Emily teased before pushing herself up from her chair. So, you got anything else for me, Professor, or are you finished with whatever this confession thing is supposed to be? I suppose so, though, I did want to ask one more question. Humph, go ahead, get on with it. You seem interested when it comes to stabbing. Do you prefer using a dagger? Well duh, but it's not proper weaponry when it comes to fighting, so gotta stick with a sword. Emily said, letting out a huff. Is that all dash? The words died in her mouth as she looked back at Byleth and saw the normally dull-eyed professor staring intensely at her. A moment that seemed to stretch on for an eternity passed, before Byleth looked away. I see. That is all. Emily watched her leave in visible confusion, then scoffed to herself, trying to ignore the twinge of, not quite fear that had hit her at that strange intensity in her former professor's eyes. The hell was that about? It seems that the commoners of the Alliance are living rather well. While they may not be able to rise to the rank of nobility, the merchant class seems to be a step away from them. One could consider them like the knighthood of Faerghus, albeit with more freedom since they don't need to swear themselves to a lord, Hubert reported to Edelgard after some investigation into the territory surrounding Fodlan's Locket. With the excuse of touring the local region, he was able to gather thorough information at a decent enough pace to report back to his lady in her quarters at the Locket. However, while the nobility may claim to care for the commoners under their banner, there is a fair amount of tension between all the houses. Be it out of fear or arrogance, they all seek to gain more power for themselves, while keeping the illusion of working together. Yes, it is something I noticed, Edelgard agreed. Most of the Alliance soldiers we fought with were from House Goneril. Not to mention it's been said House's duty to fight off the Amirans since the creation of Fodlan's Locket. It may be their territory, but leaving it to just them means that should they fall, the Alliance may be in danger of crumbling. It is a real danger, though one I doubt the lords have considered in full. I imagine if we were to ask them, they would point out that their own forces would be much better suited guarding their own territory than potentially losing manpower in the defense of the whole. I believe a certain prime minister I could mention has a similar thread of logic. And yet, divided, the members of the Alliance would fall completely if a foreign invasion were to get even the slightest purchase within their territory. Which does make them remarkably easy targets for us, Hubert pointed out. Really, this investigation of ours has made it clear the Alliance might indeed be our best target once our war begins. If we can seize or subvert each of the lords along the way and keep them from entering the fray at all, we would completely wipe their faction from the board before the game even begins. But is that the best move for us to make? Edelgard considered, frowning in thought. We know from Lysithea that Ordelia is incredibly weak. I don't want to betray her trust, but if we offered her good terms to side with us, we could leverage that deal to the other members of the Alliance. Lady Edelgard, do remember, our goal is one of conquest. We can't show mercy to everyone, lest they take advantage of it. I understand, yet, if I can speak with Lysithea and Marianne, then we might be able to get both their houses to side with us without battle. Lorenz's father also favors the Empire, among a few other houses. Fighting will be inevitable, but we can at least ensure we keep it to a minimum. What if they choose not to side with us? Then we have let our secrets be known far ahead of schedule, not to mention that while Count Gloucester might side with us, he is just as likely to betray us should it benefit him, much like Akiran, Hubert retorted. It is a far safer idea to see where the pieces land once we enact our plans. Would that not mean they'll be more likely to side against us if we keep them out of the loop until I declare war? We need to ensure we have as many allies as we can before then. The Adrestian military might be strong, but without the support of Thal's forces, we cannot hope to face off against 3 major forces, potentially 4 should the Agarthans decide to rear their heads. Lady Edelgard, the Leicester Alliance was founded on the principle that they would not bend their knee to a king, nor an emperor. Their founding principle puts them at odds with us. And even if you wish to treat with them, do not forget that they are self-serving in the end. They cannot be trusted to stay loyal to us when they think they could stand on their own. As you said yourself, 3 major forces allied against us would be a genuine threat. I don't doubt that any alliance noble we approach would keep that fact in mind as well. So your thought is that we cannot trust the alliance nobles not to ally against us, therefore we should guarantee they will be our enemies instead. An enemy we can eliminate early, yes. The people of Leicester are not eager for a liberator, Hubert. If there is a chance we can sway them to our side, is that not better than guaranteeing they will rebel against us? She held up a hand to hold back his response. On our present course, we are guaranteed to be fighting a war on two fronts. If we can seize Garreg Mach, that will keep things divided, but it also means our main hope is that the Alliance will not take to the field directly against us in the way that Faerghus is all but guaranteed to. As such, I agree, we should take steps to remove the Alliance as a threat. That doesn't mean we need to use violence to achieve that end though. Hubert was prepared to argue the point further, and he would have gladly done so, but a knock at the door interrupted their discussion. He frowned, then crossed the room and opened the door. "Hello, Professor. May I ask why you are here?" "Hello, Hubert," Byleth replied, nodding to the tall student. "I wanted to speak with Edelgard. Also, I think I should remind you, as your professor, that it is improper for students to be spending time in one another's bedrooms this late. These are guest quarters, Professor, not Lady Edelgard's true bedroom. Besides, I am her retainer. Where she goes, I will readily go as well." "Understood. That being said, I need to discuss something with Edelgard. Is it not improper for a professor to also be spending time in a student's bedroom after the sun has set? It will only be for a few moments." "It's fine, Hubert," Edelgard spoke before her retainer could. "We should shelve our conversation for later, otherwise we'll just keep going in circles." "Very well, in that case, I bid you a good night," Hubert said, bowing to Edelgard before he left. "Now then, what did you wish to speak about?" "I think I know who the infiltrator is. Check the description for the links to the author."